Hi everyone, it's another Leaders Series episode. We've got Hira Ali. She's CEO of Advancing Your Potential. And this conversation was really personally informative for me. Hira is a serial entrepreneur and a writer of many books around diversity. The particular one is Her Allies, which is a practical toolkit to help men lead through advocacy. And as a leader myself, I think that's really, really important as we try to create more diverse workforces. So this was a lesson for me and learned a lot from Hira, and I hope you enjoy the conversation as well. Good morning, Hira.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes, looking forward to our conversation. Just for our listeners here, we've got Hira Ali here today. She's an author, and we'll talk more about the books that she's authored. She's a leadership consultant and also CEO of Advancing Potential. She has been involved in some of our diversity chats, and we felt it would be great to kind of get her on to have a conversation about her leadership, about her businesses, and also how she sees leadership in the modern era, and hopefully the improved era. So, Hira, how are you today?
I'm good, David. Thank you so much. How are you?
I'm very well. Yes, it's been a lovely week this week, weather-wise, and it's slightly cloudier today, so it's a bit of a disappointment. But other than that, no, it's all good. So Hira, obviously, I've introduced yourself, but tell me more about yourself. About your business career, your businesses, and also how that's linked into the books that you've authored.
Okay, so that usually has a very long answer, because my career started 16 years ago, and 3 countries ago, I would say. I'm originally from Pakistan. That's where I started working, and I was working in HR as junior manager HR, and then I progressed there in HR roles, and then I moved to Dubai. That's where I launched my first business, that was ED Management Consulting, and there I was offering training and development, training and development solutions, and women-focused leadership trainings, managerial trainings to different organizations. And then I moved. I say this because, I'm not a serial entrepreneur. I do not launching my business in different countries. I moved because my husband moved, so I moved with him. So I was there in Dubai for a number of years. The business was doing quite well. It picked up fast. People were inviting me over for different sessions and workshops. And then my husband relocated to London. So that's where I found myself in yet another new country. Nobody knew me. I knew nobody. And I had to build my leadership brand from ground zero.
Sure.
And I launched Advancing Your Potential. And the reason why I didn't use the same name, ED Management Consultant, because A, it was registered there in UAE, and B, I wanted something more personalized, because I think that the thought of having a consulting company with a setup in a completely new city was intimidating. So I said, I'm going to name this Advancing Your Potential. So I went with Advancing Your Potential, launched it a number of years back, took a couple of years to get the business moving, of course, because I was busy writing books, I was creating content, and I was like, my own finance person, social media person, marketing person, content creator. So it was a lot of things all at once. So that's how it went. And then through Advancing Your Potential, I launched a number of different initiatives. One is the Gray Area. It's a survey. It's not exactly a survey organization, but yes, primarily the focus of the Gray Area, which I launched with another partner, Sharon Kotaria, is to capture the experiences of marginalized groups. Sure. And then there's International Women Empowerment Events, which is a separately registered business. And the focus of that is to organize conferences for Asian women across the globe, and for Asian and the Western women to meet, interact, find what's challenges that are holding them back, what unites them. Then there is also Career Excel, which is the online women leadership program. So these are my businesses. But mostly everything is under the umbrella of Advancing Your Potential. Only International Women Empowerment Events is separate. And then, yes, I wrote 2 books in the last 4 years.
So you say you're not a serial entrepreneur, but I think you're probably one of the busiest entrepreneurs I've met so far in this session. And so congratulations to that. And it's difficult to set up one business and make it successful, but it sounds like 5 or 6. So well done. And also on the book. So the first book, I haven't read the first book. What's the first book called, Hira?
Her Way to the Top, A Guide to Smashing the Glass Ceiling. There
we go. And I'm reading Her Allies, which is a practical toolkit to help men lead through advocacy. My elevator pitch on it is that it's as men within the workplace, particularly in male-dominated workplaces, helping to combat that and create a more kind of diverse and a better workplace, I think, and helping different marginalized groups to advance. I think that's, have I got that right here?
Yes. Yeah.
No, I've read quite a lot in the book about, there's a bit where you talk about mansplaining and heap-eating and that sort of thing. So I've got to try my hardest in this session not to do any of those things, which I'm absolutely confident when I was reading through them that I do pretty much all of them on a daily basis. So I'm already thinking about my thing. But I think, what's really interesting for me, just looking at yourself as a leader, you talk about setting up a business in Dubai. I've looked at setting up a business in Dubai, and it's not that easy, is it? So I was just quite kind of interested to see kind of the challenges that you've encountered, in setting up your businesses, and starting those businesses.
Yes, I think that's a very good question. There have been very different challenges. So in Dubai, it's slightly more challenging to set up your business there. I don't know what the rules are now, but 6 years back, in fact, not 6 years back, this was about 8 to 9 years back. That's where I launched my first business. You had to, I think there had to be another local person who had to hold the majority share of the business. So the 51% of that business had to be held by someone locally. And for me, it was a lot of investment because launching a business in Dubai requires a lot of money. Launching a business in London just requires £200, and that's it. So I was like, oh my God, this is super easy when that happened in London. In Dubai, it's more technical, it's pricey, it takes, you have to invest money. There's certain protocols you follow. So I think setting up business is very different in Dubai as compared to setting up business in London. So what I did initially was that I did not, ED management consultant was actually working under a parent company. Okay. So that parent company was registered, they were paying the fees. And what I was doing is that whenever I would generate business, I would pay them 50% or 40% of that business as a fee. Sure. And I think that setup worked very well for me because I did not have to be properly registered and pay like about 25,000 dirhams every year. Because again, as a business person, especially when you're starting out, you don't have that much money to pay anyways.
No.
So I registered my company through a parent company, and that worked out very well for me because that meant that I would only pay whenever there was business generated from my end, and then I would pay a certain percentage of that. Of course, that meant that I had to cut down on my own income and my own profits, but it was fair enough because I didn't have to pay an annual fee at least. And then when I was doing well and I thought, okay, now I'm in a position to register my company, well, that's when we moved to London. So that never happened. So then I moved to London and I realized that, wow, I literally set up my company, registered in 3 days. And I think I still remember it was under £200. Everything was set up. I had a registered address. So everything was very smooth. But of course, in terms of taxes, UK is way different than it is in Dubai because
we've got some.
Yeah, so running the business there was very smooth. Once you set it up, then there are no taxes, there's nothing, it's just a very simple. Now I think they have introduced taxes, but here in London, I remember the first time I went for lunch and somebody said, oh, so are you keeping receipts of the business lunch? And I said, no, why? She was like, oh yeah, that you should include us. It's like, why? So it was tax, and you know, it was quite a challenge to adjust to that, David. I must admit, you know, getting all, because Dubai is tax free, as you know, and then London,
Yeah, that's right.
You have to do all the accounting and the taxes.
Exactly. Which do you, you know, as you've worked in three, you said different countries, and I was, where have you found it easiest to run a business?
In Pakistan, I haven't, well, because I was working there in professional capacity. I was working.
Yeah, HR.
So yeah, so I didn't really set up a business on my own as per se. So I would say, I think every country has its huge advantages and disadvantages, pros and cons, and I wouldn't say it's easier anyway. In Dubai, it's more difficult to set up, and after that, it's easy. In London, it's very easy to set up, but then of course you have to, you know, maintain all your tax records and
pay accountants and that sort of thing. and what drove you to write the books as well? Because I'm sure there's lots of listeners that we have here that, you know, think to themselves, oh, I could write a book, but and obviously the businesses you're running are successful, right? So and you've got kids and a family. You know, how do you juggle that, and how do you find the time, and what drove you to write those books?
The reason why I wrote my first book, How We Do the Way to Smashing the Glass Ceiling, was because when I was working in Pakistan and in UAE, I was seeing a very specific trend of challenges holding women back. And I used to think that it's because of the country that I'm in, it's the culture, it's the background, you know, those kind of things. But when I moved to London 6 years back, I realized that the challenges were very similar, because I thought I moved to this progressive city and women will be smashing the glass ceiling and issues whatsoever. But the first day I walked into a women's march and I was like, what are they marching for? And I realized they're marching for the gender pay gap. And I think that's when it hit me that it's, you know, whichever part of the world you are, irrespective of geography, women are experiencing similar challenges. So what I did was I decided to test that theory, because I was like, I can't really base it on my assumptions alone. And so what I did was I did a survey. I surveyed 300 women across the globe, of different countries across the globe. And lo and behold, the results were very similar. So I presented those results in the form of a book, and then I shared my own leadership strategies of smashing the glass ceiling. So that book was is very well received. It still gets, you know, I get tagged every other day, which is a huge blessing. People tell me how much they resonate with that. And then the second book I wrote was because when I was delivering talks for my first book, I would go to public and private sector organizations, and I would meet very well-intentioned men like yourself, David, who wanted to do well, but who had no idea, you know, about what to do. I mean, what steps should they take? And often people would think that, oh, you have to be a diversity inclusion professional, you have to be very influential, you have to be in politics, you have to be an influencer to enact change. And the purpose of writing this book was to make men understand that you don't have to be, you know, somebody very influential in your own capacity at your own level. You can make these tiny changes, and it's about, you know, different steps you can take by challenging yourself, challenging others, challenging the organization culture, and finally challenging the institution.
And I think that the key thing I've taken from our conversations and from the book is one of the main things is to be alert for this, isn't it? To be aware.
Yes, absolutely.
And you know, what sort of, you know, and the reason why I think that's come across to me is because, you know, reading the book itself, that, you know, I joked there about the mansplaining and the heap eating, and there's some great words in there, aren't there? And I think that, you know, sometimes when you do things, you're not aware of them. And I think this is one of the key things that I took from the book, what you were saying about, you know, and really as leaders, we're creating a kind of workplace culture, aren't we? You know, a workplace culture that should be beneficial for everyone, that should give everyone opportunities. And those are I think you describe them as kind of microaggressions sometimes, but it could also, aggression is quite an aggressive word, so it could just be stupid mistakes, but they build up, don't they? I think that's one of the things that I've really taken. Would you agree? And what do you think are some key piece of advice that you can kind of give to people that are trying to go on this journey to stop those types of things happening within their workplace?
First of all, David, I would like to say this, that I know you read words like repeating and mansplaining, and honestly, when I was writing this, I was a bit conscious, because the goal of writing this book was not to blame men, and do finger pointing and say, well, this is what you do when this is, well, yes, this is what you do, but not in a way which is spiteful, or putting accusations and saying. It was just to create awareness. And I know these are very gendered words, but the reality is that these are, again, whatever I mentioned there, these are the things which you should be avoiding. These are some of the things which research shows that women, and also men sometimes, men too, particularly men from marginalized groups, are a victim of these things. And this happens unintentionally. A lot of men who engage in this, they are not aware that they're doing it, right? I did not want to use these expressions because they do reek of gender essentialism. But it's the idea that specific physical, social, and cultural traits, they are native to a particular gender. But the reality is that those engaging in behaviors, those people who are engaging in these behaviors, they don't know about it. So unless you don't talk about something, they will never know, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And most of these tactics are gendered. So whether men use them consciously, unconsciously, or unconsciously, they do make women uncomfortable. So what men should do is, I think, just be aware, right? I'm sure some of these terms were like, oh my God, from where did they come? And I promise I didn't make them up. These are actual terms.
I'm trying to find the page. I've got to find some more.
Yeah, so these are, I think it's just to be aware, David, take a step back, see what you're missing. I literally did a LinkedIn post today about this question, whether you're making assumptions on the basis of a person's gender, racial identity, gender identity. And what is a different way of looking at things? And if you are interrupting, then, try and pause, try and listen to the person first, try and ask yourself, is my opinion even needed? Am I assuming that I am more competent than the other person, right? And that's an advice for everybody, irrespective of gender. Whenever we feel that we are offering advice, we do need to ask ourselves this question: is what I'm saying even needed? Is it specifically being asked for? So I think these are the sort of questions, if we pause, because we're all very quick to jump in and contribute, but if we pause to ask these questions, I think, it's going to be very different.
I think so, and I think that kind of awareness for me is important. I think part of this, we spoke about this at the start, before the conversation. This conversation really is almost a learning point for me. Within GCS, within the businesses that I work with, we've been working really hard to think about DEI, D&I, diversity, and trying to make our workplace more progressive. Sometimes I think, and I know other leaders do, it's a worry, because we talk about those small steps versus the big problems, but it sometimes feels like you're in a bit of a vicious circle, as it were. Like you said, you came to London thinking it's a more progressive society, but nothing seems to have changed. And I think my question to you is, do you feel that by making these changes and by being consistent about it, that there will be an improvement, that you are seeing, a light at the end of the tunnel?
Absolutely, yes, David. Why not? Because see, I always say this, that it's easiest to begin with yourself, right? Because change begins with you. If I start being more self-aware, it's going to have a ripple effect, because then I'm going to start noticing what other people are doing wrong. If I don't know what I'm doing wrong, then how can I know that this is a flaw in the society, or this is something which should not be practiced or done? And I think, and then when you make those changes, so for example, if you have children, you will be passing that knowledge on to your children, to people in your circle, to people at work, and there is a ripple effect. And we should never underestimate the power of that one person who can make the difference, because it always starts with one person, right? Change always begins with one person. So I think there is definitely light in the tunnel, and I have seen massive. I wouldn't say that we're there. Of course, there's still a lot to be done, but the fact that people are talking about allyship, people, particularly men now, are interested in finding out how they can be part of the conversation. I think all that is very encouraging. And I think we need to encourage more men to step up. And it's not just about women, to be honest. It's about, because allyship extends to all marginalized groups.
Marginalized groups,
So what you do for one group is very relevant to other groups as well.
And I was quite kind of interested in what you said there, and this is probably part of the consultancy that you give about, how we're conditioned as we grow up. I've got 3 daughters, so for me, I've watched this quite kind of with great interest, from the toys they get when they're young to the types of music they listen to, etc., etc. From my side, what I read was, obviously, we different genders may come into the workplace with very different expectations, personalities, and aspirations and ambitions. Would you agree? I mean, you mentioned in the book how genders think about things in different ways, and I guess that's linked into the conditioning and childhood and culture. Do you think it's important to recognize that and deal with different genders and different groups in different ways?
Well, see, there are different. Science has proven this, that there are differences between the way the way brains operate for men and women. This is not something which I have come up with. Or maybe, there's evidence there that women are more intuitive, they think a lot, they're probably more empathetic, more collaborative. Men have a different style. And again, I don't want to get into these gender wars that, men are better leaders or women are better leaders. I believe that both men and women have leadership traits, strong leadership traits, which can be leveraged. And in fact, there's a Stanford research which proves that leaders who can combine, leadership traits of men and women do very well, as opposed to leaders who only do macho follow male specific leadership strengths, or only women specific strengths. The combination is great, but so there are differences there. You need to recognize those differences. You need to leverage and combine whatever strengths and values both leadership styles offer. And then I think conditioning plays a huge role, because it's a fact, and it's not just in my country or my culture, or this is something I've seen here in UK too. We raise boys differently. Boys are always told. And here's an interesting fact, David. So girls are more confident when under the age of 9 or 10. They're often more talkative, more confident, they're bolder than boys. But as the boys grow, and again, I don't want to generalize this, but there was a study by NHS, I think, which showed that as boys and girls grow older, the reverse starts happening for girls. Girls are told to keep their heads down, to don't speak out of line, to always be polite, to be likable. And all of that impacts their confidence, and the confidence starts going down, and the boy's confidence starts going up. Now, as the mom of a son, of course, this research really interests me, and it does depend individually too. I've seen siblings where girls, are more talkative, or apparently more confident than boys, but then as they grow, things become different. So I think it's important to be aware of these gender stereotypes, which we are inculcating in our children. And I think parents need to be aware of that. Teachers need to be aware of that. Universities need to be aware of that, because that's how we begin, right? Yeah. Before we enter the careers, that's where the influence is. So I think media plays a huge role in reinforcing and perpetuating gender stereotypes. So I think that needs to be questioned as well.
Yeah, and I think what's important, and I guess what advancing your potential does as a leadership consultancy, is really to point out that if we harness the potential of our whole team, then we will have a better team. Yes. And if we give everyone within the team the opportunity to grow, then we'll have a happier team as well, right? And that's what we all want within our workplace, I think. And I think that sometimes people come at it as leaders, and I'm particularly talking about kind of white male leaders, and from a position of maybe fear. You know, what does this mean for me? How is this going to upset the status quo? And do you get that when you go out and consult? Do you kind of get that feeling, even though maybe sometimes it's unsaid?
See, for me, when I was writing this book, it was very important to acknowledge what was holding allies back. And if you've seen the beginning, I have written the reasons down, and one of them is perhaps a zero-sum mentality, that if I support other people, then maybe my share of the pie is going to grow smaller. And it's a natural fear. I mean, I'm not going to dismiss this and say, oh, it's just ridiculous. But what I would say is that, you know, try and see it from other perspectives. There are a lot of advantages in getting more diverse leaders. Many organizations, from McKinsey to EY to different universities, they have done researches which prove that when you have more diverse leaders, it fosters creativity, it affects the bottom line of the company's financial results. So it's not just good for you and the company, it's good for the entire economy. When women are here to stay, they make half of the population. So if you get more women in leadership roles, and especially Harvard research has shown that women score consistently high in leadership traits. So if you could have that, why not? Then you are boosting your own company performance, and then individually there are a lot of benefits. If you are somebody who works well with people from different diverse backgrounds, you have what is called a sustainable collaborative advantage. People would love to work with you. In this world of today, when diversity inclusion and belongingness is being given so much importance and emphasis, if you're a person who gets along with everybody, you will be a real catch for organizations. I think you need to sit down with these leaders and make them understand why it's important, and make them find out their why. Why would they want to support it? Because again, it's socially, morally, ethically, it's a good thing to do, but a lot of things are good for us, which we don't do, right? So you need to focus on why this is important for them. And then, of course, if you don't convince them, then you have to focus on why it's important for the organization and why their buy-in is important.
Yeah. And I think, that makes it progressive as well. Like, we work, GCS now, we have offices in India, Mexico, US, Poland, we're thinking about South Africa. And that's where, you're creating in the past, it was difficult to do that, to have this, you can't help but have a diverse workforce, can you? If you're working in 5 different continents, right? And I think it's almost been, sped up our diverse workforces because of, we're working with a company at the moment that need a certain type of network engineer, and they will hire this person anywhere in the world, right? They don't care where they are because they can do this work remotely. And straight away, that creates a whole different type of diverse culture, doesn't it, Hira?
Diverse people bring bicultural competence. They can really help your company integrate into global markets.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there are a lot of advantages there, which if we can focus on, we'll find out that diversity is good, and that not just obviously diversity, but inclusion and belongingness, where people are actually happy. That's good for everybody.
And one of the things I think about within our own business with diversity is that we work now in a hybrid environment, which is you can kind of come into the office, you can kind of work from home, and we give people flexibility. That does seem to have very much changed our gender balance, in terms of the way we're working. Do you I mean, there's a lot of bad things that have come out of COVID, and it's been very bad, but do you see this as a good thing that will kind of readdress some of the balances?
Absolutely, yes. I think that one great thing which has come out of COVID, despite all the misery it's brought down on us, is the fact that people are now thinking about hybrid working. People now realize that it's not important to physically come into the office. We were doing this for 2 years, right? We were sitting at home and working. And this is particularly beneficial with not just women, but people with special needs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not assuming mothers here. I mean, yes, it's primarily new mothers, but sometimes dads too. Dads also play a very active role in children's life. They get to spend more time with their children.
Yeah.
So it's not just moms, but especially, yes, for moms, or especially new moms, right? This is beneficial because they're able to work from home. Many people, I do different surveys, so women, about the challenges they hold back, and some of the women who work part-time, their main challenge is that they are, offices always expect them to turn up in office 5 days a week, and it's just difficult for them. So they end up leaving because they can't cope with the pressure and the stress. They have to do school runs, and it's childcare is so expensive, David. You have 3 daughters. You must have experienced this yourself. The childcare in UK is particularly very expensive as compared to other parts of the country. So, women always, many times it's like women are like, okay, fine, we'll just step back from work.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
working from home helps that.
Yeah, because someone has to do it, and it seems that that's generally the way it works out. So what other changes have you seen that have been good in the companies that you've worked with in terms of organizational structure that you can maybe talk about, that you've seen positive move forwards other than just the hybrid working?
I think since the last 18 months, we're now exploring 4 days a week. Doing, this test run for that. I think that's a huge thing. About 2 or 3 years back, I know I wrote an article on presenteeism during COVID, where workers in UK are they're exhausted, they're tired, they are working much more than they should. And I think COVID brought that necessary break and pause in our lives. Where we reconsidered our values, and we reprioritized what was important to us. And I think organizations are now paying a lot of attention to mental health. I think that's become that's a very positive sign. A lot of different things which were originally not being discussed. Diversity inclusion has it's being now discussed more than ever before, especially after Black Lives Matters. So, in the last 18 months, I would say, and then there's more, there is not just emphasis on tokenism, filling the numbers, just getting diverse people on the board. It's about how we can make them belong, how we can encourage them to bring their authentic selves to the table. So, so of course, it's, a happy workforce is good, is in everyone's interest. So there's work-life balance, there's, there's more inclusion, there's diversity, it's good for climate change, right? There's this, so, I think last 2 years, people are talking more and more about climate change and sustainability, and what role we can play. So I think all those have been very positive changes in organizations that I'm working with.
We're sitting in the UK in the middle of a rail strike, aren't we, at the moment? So I think if the rail strike had been this bad probably 3-4 years ago, we would have been. But yeah, as it is, we'll just we can just go back to working from home, can't we? So I guess that that's quite a lot. I think what's important for me. I think you mentioned there about mental health, and another thing you say in the book is about take it like a man. I think you say quite a few different terms like crying like a girl, etc., etc. And there is that kind of element of not talking about feelings, not talking about mental health, not talking about when you're stressed, or maybe taking it out in a different way, in an aggressive way, not trying to kind of calm it down or talk it through or show empathy. Do you think that is a kind of a symptom of a more diverse workforce, where there is more maybe female influence, there is more influence of different types of groups, because they're different viewpoints are saying no, the workplace doesn't have to be like this, it should be more like this.
Definitely. There was a research which I haven't quoted in my book, which I also recently discovered, was that countries
third book then, Harry, you've got a third book in you.
There are countries that are more gender inclusive, where the gender gap is smaller, the male suicide rate is lower.
Okay.
And I mean, of course, there are lots of different layers to it, but one of the obvious reasons was that when you have men and women participating equally, then men, and when you're talking about inclusion, when we have more women working in the workforce, then men tend to be liberated from any sort of toxic norms that have been established for them, where they believe that they too can take a break. So, if their wife or the partner, the spouse is working, then they can take a break and look after children. There's no harm in that. Traditionally it's just been like, oh, men should do it, and men should be brave, and men should be the bread earners, and men should be strong. And that's frankly a lot of pressure, David. So when you are talking about gender diversity, particularly, you are encouraging men to take a break, literally, to talk, you're liberating yourself from all these fixated rules that society has been created for men and for women since decades. So because you're talking about
centuries.
Exactly, centuries.
Thousands of years, I guess.
Yes. So I think it's all about challenging these role stereotypes as well. And I think that's just good, because being a wife, mother, daughter, sister, men's mental health is something which I'm very much interested in. So of course this is something which is if gender inclusion and more diversity is that, and again, so many books have been written on this, that men who are when they participate in being more gender inclusive, they open up, they build compassion, they acquire gender intelligence that is just great in terms of getting along with women in their circle, so that anyways is healthy and positive in terms of relationships.
So I think we'll kind of join the conversation to a close now, and it's been a really, really interesting chat. But what would you say is the most important thing you've learned as a leader within your own businesses, and from talking to leaders in the last few years, as you've been this journey, you've been driving this journey?
So I think, David, what I've learned is that leaders do not need to have all the answers. They do not need to know everything. They can, I think it's healthy to be vulnerable. And by vulnerable, I'm not saying that, every day you come on social media and share your weaknesses and your problems. But yes, there's no harm in telling people that, I struggled, or this is a challenge, or I don't know this. Being transparent, being authentic, sharing not just your successes, but also your failures. I think that leadership trend has evolved, because initially leaders were very scared. They thought that, being vulnerable is just going to knock you off, from that top tier, which is, I think vulnerability is being empathetic, being vulnerable is become a very likable trait in leaders. So that has changed. Talking about mental health, knowing when to take a break, knowing that, okay, I'm exhausted now, or this is too much, I need to pause. So I think from that point of view, and also, knowing that you will make mistakes. Again, especially in terms of allyship, I tell you this, David, nobody has all the right answers. I've written a book on allyship. Today only I wrote about something which I have been doing, which, I'm embarrassed about this. But the reason why I share this is because to encourage people to know that, you will make mistakes. The important point is that you acknowledge responsibility and move on from there and promise to do something better.
And you're going in the right direction, and you're making changes to yourself, which hopefully, if everyone does that, will make changes to the workplace, to society, to humankind. So brilliant. Well, Hira, thank you very much for your time today. It's been, I think this is one of the conversations for me that's been most personally rewarding, because I feel like there's a lot for me to learn on this as well. So hopefully some of the listeners will find that themselves. But thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, David. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much.